Daphne. He heard about the store. Then he called and said he was going to go out on a hike, and went out together. So we talked about him coming to speak tonight. I really appreciate Dave's availability, and this is going to be a little different than we've done in the past, but I think it's going to give us a bigger picture perspective on this topic that we're all interested in, as well as the research and the investigations that Dave has done on missing people. So, without further ado, would you welcome with me Dave Paulides.
Thanks to Jim and his crew for having me here.
You're welcome. I'll turn it off in a second.
So, the segment you're going to see right now is about missing people. And the reality of it is that I got started and I got some... And some people may have heard me on the radio years ago talking about Bigfoot. This first segment has nothing to do with Bigfoot. And a lot of people say, oh, you know, you're making claims that it does. I've never made a claim anywhere privately or publicly. So you know what we've documented have anything to do with it. I've never stated my personal feelings, and you're not going to hear them tonight. What you're going to hear is a series of facts that will shake your core. And they are pure facts about people who have disappeared. And your perception of the wilderness will change after tonight. That's a flat-out guarantee, because you're going to see things that the media won't talk about. I'm not going to exaggerate it. You're just going to hear how things have come together over the years for me and my team. How this started was several years ago, almost 5 years ago now. I was in a national park doing some peripheral research. Some people were following me around the park, which is kind of normal. And you learn when you go to a national park, you don't approach the rangers and you don't approach the national park staff. You want to approach the people that are contractors, because they're people like you and me. They're just working there. And they don't work for the government. They can say anything they want and they can tell the truth. So I was talking to contractors in the park. And contrary to what some people may think, the government employees can't talk. They can't talk and talk about personal feelings while they're on duty. They can just read the government line. And unfortunate or fortunate, however that may be, at the end of that day in the national park, I went back to this cabin off the national park property. It was getting dark. I get a knock on the door. There are two people standing there, and they said, "Hey, Dave, we're off-duty national park rangers, and we want to talk to you. And we have some information that we think is interesting, and you're going to want to know it. So can we please come in?" Sure. They come in, and that lasted about almost 3 hours. These two people said that they had worked in a series of national parks, each of them separately, over about 15 years. And during that time, they each had come to independent conclusions that there were a lot of missing people in national parks. Too many to be normal, they thought. And the conditions that they went didn't fit the circumstances of where they went missing and how long, etc. the investigations went on. And they stated at the front end, when the people went missing, there was a lot of press, there was a lot of publicity for 7 or 8 days. People weren't found, and then there was nothing. There was no follow-up, there was nothing. They didn't hear about it anymore. And they said when they went out to try to find out how many people went missing in these areas, they couldn't even find out, and they were rangers in the parks. And they said something's wrong. And they said, "You've got the background, you can try to figure this out." And they gave me a set of criteria, a set of data that they knew about at their individual parks, and they said this may help. And I'm shaking my head, I'm thinking, wow, this is unbelievable. Because the world I come from, 20 years as a police officer in a big city in California, any small, medium-sized city anywhere in the United States keeps track of missing people inside their jurisdiction. It's a flat-out guarantee. And the reason being is that those people are entered into national databases. If I'm a police officer in Denver and somebody's missing from Salt Lake City, I run your name through the system, I'm going to see you're missing. Without that sort of conjunctive connection between two jurisdictions, you're never going to find people. Or say I come across a parked car up here in the woods, I run the license plate, unless I know that the person was missing was associated with that. I may not know that nothing's wrong, and I may not impound the car. Everyone with me so far? So starting off, when we started to go through reports of missing people, you start reading 5, 10, 15, 20, things aren't real apparent. When you start reading 7, 8, 900, certain things are starting to come to you as repetitive in nature. When you start reading 3,000 and 4,000 cases, things start to solidify. And all of us had these piles of reports surrounding us that had these commonalities with us. As an example, at the top there, victims with disabilities. All of a sudden, we're getting a big pile of missing people that have disabilities. Disabilities that they can't walk real far. Disabilities that they have bad hips. An 84-year-old man that can't walk a block disappears and can't be found. All of a sudden, this pile starts to get large. Now, you have victims with disabilities, meaning they have autism or Alzheimer's. But on the opposite end of that, we start to notice there's highly intellectual people. I'm talking highly intellectual people that have disappeared and not been found. There's 4 physicists that have disappeared in the last few years and have never been found. There's a German man from Los Angeles that was here from Germany. He was a professor in physics at a big university there. He was here for a convention. He was with people walking through the woods in a line. He gets tired. He sits down with another counselor on the hike. He says, I'm going to go meet up with the group. There's hardly any place to go other than this trail. He disappeared. They searched for him for 3 weeks. They never found him. Where did he go? Nobody knows. We start to get this feeling in us that sooner or later, these people are going to be found. The reality of it is, you can't be feeling this way. It's not normal for people to disappear and not be found. It's not normal. Now, there's a certain element in society that disappear and don't want to be found. So, that's part of the exclusionary process in what we are lining our books with out there. If somebody has a mental disability, we won't include them. If somebody is associated with a drowning, we won't include them in our books or our research. It's part of the exclusion. Now, when we start to go down this list, canines. We have this big stack of reports where people disappeared with dogs. Doesn't make sense. Or the dog runs away and they run to chase the dog and they disappear. And both are gone. And in fact, there's a case as we speak that you're going to hear about in a little bit of a Los Angeles firefighter paramedic that disappeared under those exact circumstances. I got 100 emails in the last 5 days about it. They said, this is right, exactly like what you said. Well, I know. The other key part is when you and I walk down a trail, dressed just like I am today, we're going to leave a trail of scent. And that scent trail, believe it or not, could be there for weeks. They bring bloodhounds and canines in, and sometimes the dog will walk in a circle at the point of the trailhead and just sit down. Other times the dog will walk to the trailhead and look at the master and sit down. The master says, I have never seen a dog act like this. There's either not a scent there or it doesn't want to work, and that's not normal because every scent dog wants to work. They get out of their car, they're ready to go. They're happy to work. But in these cases, they don't find a scent, and they won't find a scent. The victims, if they are found, they're found near or in dry creek beds or creeks and rivers. National parks are a big part of this, and you'll see that in a little bit. There's a very odd phenomenon that when we started to track this, it goes back to my police officer days, that when we were dealing with a serial criminal, say a bank robber, we'd get out a map and we'd plot all the locations where the person hid. And usually if it turns out to be a circle, where does the suspect live? In the middle of the circle. And the first time they hit was probably the closest to their house. So I always got in the process of mapping things. And you're going to see how this came about. And there's a geographical clustering to this that can't be explained. Mountains foods and waters are going to be predominant on that clustering. Berries. There's a whole series of people in my books that have disappeared while they were berry hunting. You're going to go, that's kind of weird. I'm going to say that's really weird. But when they're looking for huckleberries, they usually are never found. Can't explain that. That's the truth. Swamps are associated, especially with East Coast disappearances. And this is true. A lot of times little 2- and 3-year-old kids are found in the middle of a swamp on a dry piece of land. They can't remember anything, they don't know how they got there, and they don't know how to swim. And they're dry. Many times when the victim is found, either they have a disability and can't talk, or they're too young to talk, or they don't remember what happened. Most of the time when a victim is found, they're found in a semi-conscious or a completely unconscious state. And if they're unconscious, they're face down. Can't explain. Many, many times they're missing clothes or shoes or both. And they can't explain it. Many times the clothes and the shoes are never found. 85% of the disappearances are in the afternoon or early evening. If the victim's found, a high percentage of the time, they're found in an area that has already been searched. Sometimes searched 50 times, according to other searchers. I'm going to say this right now. I do not believe that search and rescue teams are that incompetent. And I never would say that. I don't think the people were there when the search teams were looking. Many times, a small little victim is found in the middle of a trail when searchers are going out day to day to search. Almost as though they were placed there to be found. Weather. Many times, bad weather is either happening as the person disappears or immediately after they disappear. In some of the instances, record weather comes in. There's a disappearance called Dennis Martin. It rained 6 inches in the first 3 days and didn't stop raining for 8 days. Destroys any scent, destroys any tracks. Very hard for searchers. Let me get on the National Park Service just for a bit. When we got this information from the park rangers, it's pretty common to say, okay, these guys must know what's going on. They're pretty competent. We've got to listen to them. Well, the federal government has a law called the Freedom of Information Act. And it says that you, as a citizen, are entitled to any document that doesn't violate national security. And you're entitled to that document for just the fees that it costs them to recover those documents, meaning copy fees and a very small clerical fee. The National Park Service, unbelievably, has their own rules. They interpreted the Freedom of Information Act totally different than everybody else. So, we filed and we said we want a list of missing people from Yosemite. Then we filed a week later and we said we want a list from the entire National Park Service system. So, 3 or 4 weeks later, an attorney from the National Park Service calls me and says, why do you want that information? If any of you ever filed, you need to know that that cannot be a legitimate question in the process, and it can't be used as a question to determine if you get the documents or not, because that's what it's like. I said, why are you asking me that? He doesn't, well, I just want to know. I said, it's irrelevant to the conversation. We're interested in missing people, I just want to get them. He goes, well, we don't have any lists of missing people. I said, wait a minute. I said, maybe I'm asking the question wrong. No. People that have gone missing in Yosemite during the last, say, let's start at 10 years. I just want to see that list that you have. No, we don't have a list. I said, then how do you know when people have gone missing? Well, we rely on the institutional memory of our employees. That's a quote. I said, okay, so I do want that list. And he said, well, okay. I said, I'm going to claim the author's exemption. And there's an exemption in the Freedom of Information Act that if you are a published author, and I am, by Hancock House, was my first publisher, and I want an author's exemption, and I want the list. And he comes back right away. He says, your books aren't in enough libraries. I said, how many libraries do I need to be in? He says, well, I'm not going to disclose that information. Okay. So I said, well, how much is it going to cost me? I'm figuring they're going to say a couple grand. From Yosemite, he said 34,000 it's going to cost me. And if you want it from the whole system, it's 1.4 million, and it's in email form. Now, the latest character assassination that they tried was that man right there at the bottom, Jeff Christensen, disappeared Rocky Mountain National Park under very, very strange circumstances. He wasn't found for 8 days, and he was found in an area that had been searched 20 times. The Rocky Mountain National Park rangers didn't even find their own man. They didn't know he was missing for 24 hours. Now, at the time while they're searching for him, they heard gunshots inside the park, which is very strange. You never hear gunshots inside a national park. And they heard clicking on the radio. He was a law enforcement ranger, so he carried a gun and he had a radio. When the rangers in the park didn't find him, some people just passing through the park happened to locate him. Now, the reason I know all this is because I went to archives for about 2 weeks digging up every article I could find on this event. Now, they found him with his head bandaged, deceased, meaning he lived for a certain period of time. So, we've again filed for a Freedom of Information Act for the report on a special event. They brought in a special investigation team to look into this event because the ranger died and was missing for so long. So it's a big file, probably 200 or 300 pages. They said, well, if you want that file, we're going to have to review it and redact it first. And that's going to cost you $7,200. Now, the reason I wanted that file, I want to see if Christensen fired his gun, number one. Number two, I want to see how many injuries they say he had on his body. Number three, I want to see how many times that area was searched in an area he was supposedly last seen in, that nobody found him. The guy was a stud. He was a ski patrolman during the winter. If anyone was going to live, Jeff was going to live. But nobody's going to see that file. Yet, by law, we have a right to see it, but we're not going to see it. Okay, so this is the latest cluster map that we put together after almost 5 years of research. When we first started, there were 38 clusters of disappearances. Now there's 58. What I want everyone to pay attention to is some key things here. Right down the middle of the state. What is not in the middle of the United States? Mountains and a lot of water. Mountains and water. What's key on that first thing? As you go up, start right about here, you got the Sierra Nevada mountains. And you got the Pacific Ocean 250 miles away. As you keep going north, it turns into the Cascades, and you got big mountains and volcanoes starting right about here, all the way up. Olympic National Park, cluster. All of these. Mount Rainier National Park, cluster. Mount Rainier has somebody missing right now. Just went missing a couple days ago. As you come around to Idaho, big mountains. And you go into Colorado, Rocky Mountain National Park right there. A little further south, another cluster. Mesa National Park. This is Utah Wilderness in Utah. This is the border of Oklahoma and Arkansas. This is a Great Smoky Mountain National Park right here. And pay attention, the Appalachian Trail. Water. Now what's happened just recently, since I put this map together, it completely encompasses the Great Lakes. You put that together, floored. Floored about this. Why? Because as we're digging into the archives and we're reading, everyone on this team is reading all kinds of books all the time. Turns out, I don't know if anybody knows this, the Great Lakes has been called the second Bermuda Triangle for over 100 years. I never knew that. There's been dozens and dozens and dozens of boats and ships that have disappeared under strange circumstances, and planes, and I'm talking big commercial jetliners, and Air Force planes that have disappeared and never been found. I didn't learn that until we started mapping this. So, the big thing on the map, mountains and water. This is unreal to us. This whole middle section of the U.S. is very strange. Now, we kind of cut it off here, didn't get all of Canada in. But as you go up into this area of Canada, there's so much water over there because it's probably 1/3 water in this area of Canada. And then over in this area of British Columbia, it's again really close to water. There are some strange disappearances in Florida, no clusters. This is a cluster right here, 3 people disappeared in one incident. This is something that threw a lot of people that said, Dave, you really know what's taking these people. Until this last book came out, you really know, and you're holding back information. The reality of it is, the longer you keep going with research, the more you understand. And as long as the profile fits, then we keep doing the research and we'll keep including disappearances. And just because a disappearance occurs on the water doesn't mean it doesn't fit our profile. And that one in Florida threw a lot of people because it fits the profile and it was on the water. Questions about the map?
Hawaii?
Hawaii has one disappearance on it that fits. And it was an autistic boy that disappeared at a home. And within feet of his disappearance, they found his clothes laid out. And they found him about a week and a half later, and he couldn't explain where he was. Oh, I'm sorry. Alaska has quite a few. Yeah.
What part of Rocky Mountain National Park was Jeff Christensen found it? Did they disclose that?
Yeah, they did. It was in all the articles, and I think it was under Mount Chiquita. I'm pretty sure, but don't quote me on it. 1,200 cases rolling around.
I understand.
But it's in the book. Yeah.
Does your mapping extend as far north above Alaska as the Mackenzie Mountain Range?
So we didn't really, down here is Alaska. There's the disappearances in Alaska down here. Again, it's a small map for a giant area. But I don't care where in Alaska somebody disappears. If it fits, it's going to go.
This would be just above Alaska, at the border, the right.
Down here?
Northern right corner of the state.
We would include it if it was there. Maybe I've never heard about it. Yes, sir.
What about Portland, Oregon?
So we don't do urban disappearances, meaning cities. Suburban disappearances, yes. There was one in Salt Lake where a small boy, 10 or 11 years old, went out to walk his dog in the mountains by his house, disappeared. Fit the profile, it's in the book. Sir?
Yeah, you're not relating this to Sasquatches, but I'm sure most people here see a direct correlation between sightings of Sasquatches and what you got here.
Did you hear what I said about Florida?
Well, yeah, I
I was in the Sasquatch business for a while. I never saw one in the ocean.
read articles where they swamp apes, skunk apes, all that. I don't know. I just pointed that.
Please read the books, your paradigm will shift. Yes, sir.
Has it been easier to find cases looking, now that you know, you're kind of, I see you're starting to uncover around water and around mountains. Since you made that discovery, has it been easier to uncover more, to kind of know the concept?
You know what's happened is that people like you, your awareness is up. The more people I tell, the more shows I'm on, the more emails I get, and the more aware I am. That was a good wake-up call. So that has helped, the awareness from other people, because we can't cover every small little newspaper, but more of you out there can hear about things and tell me. That helps. Sir?
The profile you're talking about was generally on the first page.
Yes, sir.
You have urban and suburban in this?
Urban is one of the exclusions.
So are there any other exclusions?
Drownings, mental health issues. Yes?
With regards to the West, you have some significant rivers such as the Mississippi that have not seen a lot of clusters there. Help me understand that.
So, where the Mississippi starts in northern Minnesota,
Right.
some disappearances there that will just knock your socks off.
Okay.
And there are some along the river. But what I tell people is, don't rest your soul on the cluster. Okay? Just because there's a cluster there doesn't really mean a lot to me. In fact, like you said, if you follow the Mississippi down within a 50-mile radius of the Mississippi as you follow, there's a lot of cases. Yes, sir.
Having read your books, you have two profile types in your book. One is people hiking, specifically all of a sudden a snowstorm occurs after they disappear while they're hiking and everything's missing at that point. Your second one is people potentially being jettisoned off of cliffs while they're hiking because of the nature of how far out from the cliff they actually wound up being discovered at the bottom of cliffs. The two cases in Colorado fit both of those. I'm wondering if you're working on those. The kid in Fort Collins that fell off of Long Peak down 1,000 feet to his death. Nobody knows how he got off the cliff and whether that fits the profile. And the other one is the McManus father and son up in Echo Lake and Mount Evans that disappeared. I've never heard if they were ever found.
Too early to tell.
April 4th when they disappeared.
When you read the stories about what their family said, they weren't ready for that severe weather. That was one of the problems. So it's hard to say. Until they find out what happened, they find the bodies, it's hard to say. There's other more recent cases in Colorado that fit it to a T. I'll talk about in a little bit. One more question, then we're going to move on. Yeah?
Is there a connection, or can you say, with UFO sighting clusters?
Not that I can say. That's not saying there's not.
Right.
Good. So, let's talk about current events. People always say, hey, what's going on right now? Well, this hits on a couple of keys. First of all, it's a cluster area, Mount Rainier. This woman disappeared just a couple days ago. She was an outdoor writer in Washington, really, really famous. Hiking with, now listen carefully, hiking with a partner. Her and her partner take a rest. She says, I'm just going to go up the trail a little bit. I'll be right back. They stop right below, they hit the snow zone. He says, I wait. She doesn't come back. I walk up. She's not there. Huge search going on the fourth day, not found. Unbelievable. This is another thing. People who are either leading on the trail and you can't see them, or people falling behind on the trail. This is what we write about. There was an article written in the Huffington Post, and the title of it was, Don't Be Last in Line. And I read the book and said that. Okay? So anyhow, currently, search and rescue going on right now on Mount Rainier for this lady. They have no clues, have found nothing. It's a case just outside of Lake Tahoe. I've been in this area 100 times. Very near the American River, fished that area many, many times. Kid went up to stay at his folks' house, cabin, said he was going to go on a short afternoon hike, disappeared. We're going on 2 weeks, not found, no equipment, no nothing. How many people heard about this firefighter? One, two, couple? Firefighter, paramedic from Arcadia, California. Mike Erdman, right here. He and a buddy went hiking in an area in Ventura County, real remote, rocky, desolate. He hiked in for a couple days. As they're setting up camp, Erdman brings his dog. As they're setting up the camp, the dog takes off running. Erdman, wearing just shorts and a t-shirt, takes off to get the dog. Partner waits, calls, yells. The dog's gone, he's gone. So the partner goes to sleep that night, says, oh, maybe in the morning I'll have better luck. Searches the next day. Can't find the dog, can't find Mike. Decides, I'm going to leave my pack here, I'll go in and I'll get help. He packs out. That was a week ago, I think last Friday or Thursday, still not found, dog not found. Unbelievable story because he's barefoot. Again, a canine and a person disappear simultaneously. Everyone look at this for a second. Anyone tell me what the common denominator is? You're up. Yeah.
Can provide themselves.
By themselves? Anybody else?
Yes, in National Park.
They're all physicians. They all went missing. And they all went missing in